Okay, good morning, everyone. Yeah, thank you for coming today. I really appreciate seeing everyone here, and I want to thank you for bringing yourselves and your pure intentions into the room here. It always feels better with you here, so thank you. You may wonder why, even though I continuously lose my battle with technology, that I'm insisting on using it today, but it's in a good cause. It's in a good cause. And basically what's going to happen is many of you will have seen the painting that's over the door of our shrine room, and may wonder how it came to be there and what its story is. And so that's my job today, is to tell you the story of this unusual painting. And the situation that brought it about. But before we start, we will start with our, speaking of pure intention, we're going to start by restating our pure intention by reciting the refuge prayer. It will be recited 3 times, twice in English, and then once we'll chant it in Tibetan. So there you are. Oh, by the way, the gentleman I spoke to earlier, I have your cards here. So we'll talk after. Okay, yeah, sorry, I had to take care of a little business here. It's good. Okay, we'll start with the words in the Buddha. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. Or Sanjay Chudan Soji Chonamla Jang Chu Pardu Dani Kyap Suchi Dagi Jin Soji Be Sunam Ki Trola Penjir Sanjay Druparsho. Or Palden Sawe Lama Rimboche Tagi Chiwar Pede Den Shala Kadrin Jembo Gorneje Sunte Kusum Tugging a drip sal to soul. All right. Thanks again for being here. Those of you who were here last weekend know that we had a bit of a special event last weekend when Lama Karma Drodol came and spent the weekend reading out loud to us. He read to us the life story and songs of the great Tibetan saint Milarepa, and gave us, I guess you could say, the blessing of Milarepa's speech by reciting the entirety of his life story very rapidly in Tibetan. And I asked him what the function of these reading transmissions were, and he said that part of it is for the blessing and continuity of the lineage. And so I was very touched by that, because from time to time we do discover that we're part of something larger. Our center has been in Columbus for almost 50 years. We will be celebrating our 50th anniversary in September of 2027. And next January, at the end of January in 2026, we will observe the 10th anniversary of the fire that destroyed our previous building on this site. So we have a lot to look back to. And, looking back, I can understand can be tedious for people who weren't there. And sometimes stories are better if you were there for them. Sometimes the stories don't really translate well to a different audience. It's one thing to go through something and another to hear someone talk about it and so on. But I'm going to try, off and on over the next year, from time to time, to talk about where we came from and who we are now and what we represent. I think it's become sort of obvious since April that we have some tradition behind us, that we're not just a place to come and sit and meditate. We've got a few more things to talk about. And one of those things to talk about is the 2,500-year-old philosophy and practice of the Buddha, Shakyamuni, but also the 1,000-year-old practice of Mahamudra meditation, which came to us through a lineage including Milarepa from Tibet, and through a living group of teachers who came to us in the 1970s for no apparent reason other than to ensure the survival of a tradition they felt was in danger of being destroyed. Because everyone knows the story of Tibet, this country where the indigenous people have lived for centuries, maybe even millennia, and how they attempted to push back an occupying army, and that occupying army is still there today. They were unable to push them back in 1959, and then the government sought to punish those who they felt were responsible for a counter-revolution against their government, and they began to execute people without trial and so on. And so many Tibetans felt compelled to leave the country because the sworn purpose of all of this was to stamp out religion in what was otherwise an atheist country. So they were feeling very desperate. The Tibetans were feeling very desperate in 1959. They were scared that their way of life would be lost forever. And so it was when they went into exile, many of them, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and others, went into exile in 1959, they looked for friendships everywhere. They made friends with as many people as they possibly could. And it just so happened that that some young people from the United States had come to India to find themselves, from the generation we now call the hippie generation. And many of them were in the Peace Corps, fulfilling missions in countries like India and Nepal and so on. And one such person was Charles Dawes, who came from Central Ohio. You may recognize the Dawes name as being associated with the Arboretum in Lincoln County, and it is indeed that family. And he was a social worker and Peace Corps worker in Nepal, but he met the Tibetans, and that changed his life. And when he and many other young people made contact with the great lamas who had escaped from Tibet in 1959, they wanted to bring some of that blessing home with them to the United States. And so it was that a young couple from Heath, Ohio, neighboring city to where I live now in Newark, spoke to the head of one of the four traditions of Tibetan Buddhism. They spoke to His Holiness the 16th Karmapa and said, "Will you send us a monk?" And he did. And that monk founded this center and 20 plus others around the United States and in South America as well. And by the time that Lama, that monk, passed away in 2019, that monk, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, had established Dharma centers in Karmapa's name all over the US and in several places in South America as well, and in Europe. There's a center in Slovakia. Hello, Lama Sanjay. So in any case, that's a little bit of history, and that is who is depicted in the picture. Let's see if we can get him back. Yeah, there he is. This painting was created by a man named Jan Keene, who is still living in Cincinnati, Ohio. He saw a photograph of the 16th Karmapa and was impressed with the Karmapa's presence, his mountain-like stability and his mountain-like meditative presence. And he wanted to paint it. So he painted it based on the photograph that he had received. And he added the nimbus, which is just vestigially around the halo, which is just vestigially around the Karmapa's head in this picture. He painted it exactly in this way. Some people say to me, well, the painting is off center. And I say, uh-huh. But it is striking and beautiful. And it hung, the original oil painting hung in the back of our shrine room for many years. But those of you who have seen photographs of the devastation that the fire brought know that anything that was on the wall vaporized, including the oil painting. And I was, I hated to have to tell Jan that his painting was destroyed in the fire, but he said, that's impermanence. That's impermanence. Fortunately for us, though, our AV friend, Don Fortner, had photographed the painting, and we were able to make this reproduction through a process that involved sending it to a specialty lab to bump up the resolution and do everything necessary to ensure that the painting was where I felt it belonged, which is in line of sight of anyone who is sitting here and teaching. They get to see the ultimate founder of our center. But the Karmapa was not just a great Lama who passed away too young in 1981. He actually came to Columbus, Ohio. And this coming October, yes, next month, will mark the 45th anniversary of the 16th Karmapa's coming to Columbus, Ohio, in October of 1980. And we'll be doing some celebrations about this. And one I can tell you about right now is that I got a message this week from Khenpo Sanjay Trinley, who is the translator for Khenpo Urgyen, the abbot of our home monastery in Woodstock, New York. And he said, are you going to be in town November 5th? It's a Wednesday. And I said, yes, as a matter of fact, I am going to be in town. And he said, oh, that's good. I'm coming to visit if that's all right with you. And lead a puja in honor of the 16th Karmapa. And I said, absolutely, let's do it. And that caused me to do some little bit of photo research to remember that time that the Karmapa inexplicably appeared in central Ohio. I mean, amazing. There would be people who lived in Tibet who had pictures of him and were devoted to him but never saw him in life because there were so many mountain valleys away from Serpu Monastery in central Tibet where he lived. And they had faith in him just from seeing his image. And they felt they had a blessing from him just by seeing his form. And so I thought it would be interesting to show you a few of these photographs as my Dharma talk today. Let's see if I can make this advance. Yes. This photograph shows, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but in case you can, This is Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche in the center of this picture. The young couple who said to Karmapa, please send us a monk, Wes and Pat. They lived at that time in Heath, and this picture is taken in front of their apartment in Heath, Ohio. Unfortunately, the names of their friends are lost to me, but my hope is that by putting this story out there, we'll be able to find out who they are. I'm sure I met them, but I don't remember their names. And not too long after creating the Columbus KTC in 1977, with the help of a donor, the Karmapa obtained a property in upstate New York in Ulster County, just north of the village of Woodstock, on the slopes of Mount Guardian, which if anybody's been to the Catskill Mountain Park know that Mount Guardian is at the foot of the much higher Overlook Mountain. There's a fire tower up there, and a lot of people take the very, very strenuous hike to get to the top of Overlook and can see for 30 miles, including the Ashokan Reservoir and of Ashokan farewell fame and so on. So up on that mountain was an old resort hotel. It was built in the early 1900s, and that became Karma Triyana Dharma Chakra, our home monastery. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, Bartatoka Rinpoche are in this photograph. Some people have said to me, oh, is that you in the back row? And I said, no, that's my friend Susan. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche thought we looked so much alike, he said, you, Susan, sisters. And I said, thank you. Anyway, this man is named Jamdrak. He escaped from Tibet with his brother Akhong Rinpoche in the company of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and was the first manager of KTD Monastery, who later did a 3-year retreat, solitary 3-year retreat on the property under Khenpo Rinpoche's direction, and became Lama Yeshe Losal, and now living in Scotland. This gentleman, this is the teacher known as Lama Surya Das. I knew him when he was just Jeff. And the Karmapa came to KTD some years later. The porch had to be removed because it was structurally unsound. So the porch where I met Allen Ginsberg while we were both looking for our shoes after a puja in the dining room, that is now gone. And in fact, the entire building is now gone. It was documented extensively by the local history society because it was deemed that the original building had had too many renovations for it to be considered a historic structure, but still they wanted to document the entire building. But this is His Holiness the 16th Karmapa. This, I believe, is Lama Ganga, who passed away not too long afterward, and Jamgon Khantrul III, who also passed away in the 90s. And this is, yes, my friend Susan. Susan's sister, same, as Rinpoche would say. The 16th Karmapa would give a majestic ceremony called the ceremony of the Vajra crown, or the black crown. And it was said to start a person on the path to enlightenment just by seeing him wear the crown. The crown had been presented, a replica of the crown had been presented by to the 5th Karmapa by one of the Chinese emperors, who claimed to have seen it in a vision floating over the head of Dejin Shekpa, the 5th Karmapa. And so he wanted it to be made in reality, like a material object, so that everyone could see what he saw. The Emperor Yunglou had this made. And it is said the crown that he put on his head in these ceremonies was said to be the very same one that was given to the 5th Karmapa by Yunglou. But this particular ceremony was special to the Karmapas. And it was given in the East Ballroom of the former Ohio Student Union on High Street in October of 1980. The Karmapa had already been invited by us to come to Columbus, and When he arrived, he was met by the mayor, who gave him a proclamation, and the legislature, which gave him a proclamation, and it was all lovely. And he also was there to give this ceremony. I drove the U-Haul that brought all of the equipment. That's my living room rug. Anyway, it was kind of a DIY type of situation, if you know what I'm saying. But Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche gave a lovely talk on the significance of the Vajra Crown ceremony. This gentleman, I can't remember if it was Phil, if this was Phil Lake, who I don't know where he is today, but he and Henry Hairston, who has passed away, were the drivers for His Holiness, and they were amazing, and then people brought their children. There were about 150 people in the room that night that Karmapa was giving the ceremony. It was not held to be appropriate to take photographs during the ceremony, so we did not. But he gave a talk, the Khenpo Rinpoche gave a talk about the significance of the ceremony ahead of time with his first translator, Ngudrup Burkhar. And these are the three sponsors of the Vajra Crown ceremony: Jerry Adams and his wife Kay, who were directors of the center at the time, and yes, that's me. Finally, I show up in a picture. This is me looking like I'm about to be carried away by eagles or something. I'm totally terrified, but there you have it. But it's amazing. After the ceremony, we were allowed to take photographs. And the Karmapa used a blessing wand because it's easier than leaning over a lot to bless people. And so there were more than 100 people there that day. Several people actually took their Buddhist vow of refuge with the Karmapa that day. And then the next day, he went to Dawes Arboretum. That's good old Joe White, who also has passed away. The director, oh, wait a minute, no, maybe he's still living. Anyway, sorry, Joe. Of the former director of the Dawes Arboretum, there's His Holiness Karmapa, Jamgon Khantrul Phunlop Rinpoche, and I believe this Charles Dawes' father. And there's a nicer picture, a snapshot that was taken of them that day, the sisters and the dad. And Karmapa looking so happy. He was given an honor as a tree dedication person. All kinds of people, astronauts, famous scientists and astronauts, and that kind of person would get tree dedication opportunities at the Dawes Arboretum, and there are so many of them. But that was Karmapa's day. And there's another photo from that opportunity where he shoveled some mulch on top of them as a blessing. And this is the Karmapa walking back to the car, and yeah, that's me. That's me. I was wearing a Tibetan dress like I was during the Vajra Crown ceremony because I was the press liaison for the event. And this is Jay, my assistant. And this is Jerry here. And I believe this is Henry. So we were just another day at the Dawes Arboretum. The final day of this 3-day visit, the Karmapa left that morning after doing the protector puja of Mahakala. And this was a tradition that any time he left a place, he would leave by doing the protector practice. Those of you who know our center will remember this picture of Chenrezig, the Bodhisattva of Compassion. It hung over our main shrine in the old building. It was with us from the beginning, and it also was lost in the fire. As well as all of the vestments that were made, handmade by Khenpo Rinpoche for the Karmapa's seat. They're all gone now with the exception of the, I believe it's the, Julian, I think it's the dragons, isn't it? The gold dragon brocade we still have that. And so this was painted by my friend Susan. Yes, Susan's sister, same. She keeps coming back. And so it was just amazing for Phil, and then my friend Art Chambers, who passed away recently. And this is Robin Thomas. Robin, check it out. I've got your picture. This is Louise. Anybody who remembers Louise? This is Louise. This is Kempo Rinpoche, Bardo Rinpoche, Ponlop Rinpoche, and the third Jamgon Control. And yes, these are from the very, 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 very original center that someone donated to us. And there he is, looking very majestic. And it was just so wonderful to be in his presence. And yes, hey Robin, there's you. There's my buddy Herb. He's also passed away. Some of the very, very original members of Columbus KTC. And there's the plaque that was dedicated by the 16th Karmapa at the Dawes Arboretum. And it's my hope that if the Arboretum is agreeable, that we'll be able to return to the Arboretum and do a ceremony there during Khenpo Sanjay's visit, fingers crossed. So that's just a little bit of history I wanted to share with you, because to know that we came from somewhere, and the somewhere we came from is quite old, and that what we have here in this building is a place to practice meditation and all of the forms of meditation that are taught in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. We do quiet sitting meditation every Sunday at 10. We're known for that, and we provide a place for that. But we also teach compassion meditation, known as Tonglen, or sending and receiving, that was made famous by the Tibetan Buddhist nun, Pema Chodron. And we teach mantra meditation. Our very first practice was the mantra of compassion, Chenrezig, Om Mani Padme Hum. And then we also are practitioners of Mahamudra, and that's taught to folks when they finish their Mahamudra preliminaries. So in any case, I just wanted to take a trip with you down memory lane and show you some of the images and people from that time, and give you a clue that if you're not busy on November 5th, you can tell your boss that it's a religious holiday, that you need maybe the afternoon off or something like that. We may not have any activities in the morning that day, but we'll have some in the afternoon. And in the evening that day, on the 5th, so you can mark your calendar. That is the Western calendar date on which the 16th Karmapa passed away in 1981. And he died at a hospital that is now part of the Cancer Centers of America in Zion, Illinois. And before he died, he gave enormous blessings to so many people who streamed into his hospital room. And after he passed away, he stayed in a state of meditation. His heart, the area above his heart, remained warm for days after he passed, showing that he was meditating at the time of his passing. And then his body was flown back to India, where his cremation took place at Rumtek Monastery in Sikkim. And several of our friends got to attend that and to be part of the observances and celebrations. So, but a little bit of Karmapa is still here. And so we will be observing the Western date of his passing. There's also a lunar date which moves every year, but the November 5th date is the solid Western calendar date. And so Khenpo Sanjay Trinley, with luck, will be here that day to help us to recite some prayers. So I could go on and talk about lots of other things, but it might be better to have a discussion. What do you think? Because maybe people have questions or curiosities about this, or maybe you have questions or curiosities about other things that have to do with meditation or Dharma. Feel welcome to ask any question, and I'll do my best to answer. We have 2 question microphones at either side. you can move that down. Yes, yes. Sure. There he's asking, what Charles did for the center. And he was really pivotal in getting and organizing His Holiness's visit here in 1981. But then he eventually became the director of the center in the 1980s before he relocated first to Michigan and then to Marietta, where his family was known as the founding family of Marietta College. And so Rufus Dawes, a Civil War hero, came back to Marietta and founded Marietta College. So that's his connection to Southern Ohio at Marietta College. And so Charles worked for the University of Western Michigan, I believe, first in fundraising for their aviation program, and then came to Marietta College and worked in fundraising for the college. And now he's living in California, where he's part of the Southern California Karma Takes and Choling, which is based in Santa Monica, but has locations in Desert Hot Springs and a few other places. And so I'm glad you reminded me, because I have a photograph of him in this collection. Let's see, there he is. That's him and me now. He said, we look like chipmunks, and I said, yes. Absolutely, no question about it. We definitely look like chipmunks, thanks. So he's still around. And he did some grant writing for us back in the day. And he's just, an all-around great presence and a good teacher of Dharma. He's still teaching Dharma in Desert Hot Springs now. So he's the central person for that meditation group. Yeah, but I ran into him at the monastery, maybe a few months ago. So yeah, so it's really terrific. It's great. And we all kind of look at each other and say, hey, you're still here. It's kind of nice. Any other questions, curiosities? Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Lama. That was such a treat. I think I learned so much. And it's also, really inspiring to think about how that one little call, one little action from Heath, Ohio can lead to all this, right? But looking back at our history, one of the things I love about our center is how beautiful and authentic the shrine room is. And then you walk outside and you see this modern building with the steel railings, all that. And it always reminds me, of the need for us to preserve this, to learn from, centuries ago, and then to walk out and apply it to life right now.
Exactly.
Right, so I'm just wondering your thoughts on, as we go through our next 50 years, what are some of the challenges you see to preserving our traditions and our lineage? What are some of the challenges that you see to adapting it to society as it rapidly evolves?
Right.
And what are some of the things that we all can do, to meet both of those objectives as a sangha?
I really appreciate you asking about this, because I remember when the previous building burned, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, the founder, was called immediately. Kim Miracle, who was the director at that time, was standing across the street watching it burn, and she was talking to him, and he said, "Don't be sad, rebuild it. Don't waste time being sad. Just commit yourself to rebuilding it." And then I went to see him a month later, and he said, "Oh, and by the way, make the next one bigger." So we basically knew what he wanted. And when we talked about the design of the building, he said, "I would like for you to make it look like a more conventional American-style building on the outside, but on the inside, please create a Tibetan shrine room, a beautiful Tibetan shrine room." And I think we didn't do too badly, Our first architect, Keith, thank you so much. He was agreeable when I called him. He's a former code official living in Milwaukee, who I had met just by chance on my travels around Dharma places. And I called him like within days of the fire. I said, "You busy?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm between jobs right now." And I said, hey, would you do a little thought experiment for us? I said, you know code enforcement and you know building codes. Could you please look at Columbus City building codes and also our neighborhood commission recommendations and tell us how large, remember, how large of a building we can put on this property. And he had something he had something on our desk in 2 weeks. And it is essentially the same footprint of the building as we have today. And so we were trying to carry out what Rinpoche wanted, which was conventional, more conventional on the outside, although, okay, we went a little wild with that roof, but anyhow, that was my idea. Anyway, Karmapa, the 17th Karmapa is said to have looked at the building and said, well, that looks weird. Thanks. Anyhow, so we were trying to carry that out, but we really started doing modern programming that wasn't just connected to mantra practice and Mahamudra practice. We started doing that in the mid-1980s. Those of you who were here last week when Stephen Hayes was here, the martial arts icon, really, from the Dayton area. He was one of our honorary fundraising chairs. And I met him in the 80s when he came to the KTC, and he said, where's your syllabus? And we're like, what? And he said, you really need to have a way for people to enter into your study and enter into your practice. You need a syllabus, just like college. And that inspired us to do forward public-facing programs like the Introduction to Meditation and the Introduction to Buddhism that we still provide now. And that, to me, was when we began, right in the mid-1980s, we really began our public-facing side, trying to let people know that there was something in these ancient disciplines that could apply to their everyday life. That's really when that started. And it's going to continue, I think, forever, because we can't lose sight of what lineage has brought us. 2,500 years of enlightenment through the Buddha's teachings, and 1,000 years of enlightenment through the practices of Mahamudra, the practice that the Buddha Shakyamuni gave to Tilopa in that vision, when Shakyamuni appeared in this amazing form that you see on the throne behind me, a Buddha Vajra holder or Buddha Vajradhara, and he gave him succinct and simple instructions for resting mind in its own nature, resting mind in its own natural, brilliant awareness. And those teachings are almost more applicable to us now than they were in the old days. Because who is so busy? We are. Who needs respite? We do. And what does Mahamudra offer? It offers that respite. And there are ways to train in it that are complex, but there are also ways to train in it that are incredibly simple and can be done by anyone. So our job is to try to preserve that whole spectrum of practices, from the incredibly complex to the incredibly simple, but they are all effective. So I kind of joke around that only the people who are a little bit crazy do the 3-year retreat. We're a little bit off. Maybe we're a little bit too something. But we kind of do the extreme. But then everybody else, because there's always a group preserving those practices, always, and handing them down and preserving them and handing them down. That makes the easy ones, the easy practices, so much more available, because the work that is being done at both ends of this spectrum are amazing. And I'm very excited to try to work with the modern methods that are being introduced by the masters such as Mingyur Rinpoche, who he created. He's a Karma Kaju Nyingma, teacher who he coined the phrase anywhere, anytime meditation. You can do it on the bus. You can do it in the grocery line. I love that whole idea. And we're introducing those methods also into our teaching. But there's just so much. There's so much that a person can do to improve their happiness in life just by doing simple, quiet sitting meditation. That all by itself, without the profundity of awareness meditation, even that all by itself helps people change their lives. And that's going to be applicable no matter what language, no matter what culture. That is across humanity. That's like a human thing. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that.
Very much so. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking.
Excited for the next 50 years.
I know. I hope I stick around, because we're going to need all the help we can get, So yes.
I just want to say thank you for the teaching. It was really cool. As someone relatively new here, I've been here for like I think 8 or 9 months now, which is kind of crazy to say. I've heard stories about how we got here, but to really get a breakdown is really cool. I think even more grateful for kind of where we all are today.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask, sorry, I got to read it.
Sure.
I just wanted to ask you, what was maybe some of your favorite moments or favorite specific teachings that he gave to you when you were early on learning Buddhism that stuck with you till today? I'm sure there's a ton, but
Yeah.
maybe you could think of one or two.
I really appreciate people asking about Khenpo Rinpoche because truly unique individual. He was born in 1924 in Tibet. That was the year my mom was born. And I mean, what? He lived, by the way, to be like 95 years old. And so he lived an incredibly long time. In the last 45 years of his life, he did live in the United States, essentially sort of in exile from everything, if you know what I mean. And with all of us, we're normal, right? Anyhow, and he survived us. But pretty much immediately, he was able to grasp our situation. And even in his earliest teachings here in Columbus, he said things like, okay, so here in America, you're technologically advanced. I get that. And you might look at Tibet as being a backward country. I get that. He said, but we have something that you don't have. And that is, we have methods to cultivate peace of mind. And that's something that we have that you might need. So I kind of feel that he got us on a very deep level fairly quickly. Later, he told us that when he was a boy, he dreamed of America. He didn't know it was America. He just knew it was a place. He said, I was in a city, what you would call a city, tall buildings, lots and lots of people. And the men and the women dressed the same. They all wore trousers, he said. He said, and it wasn't until he got to New York City in 1976 where he had come because he needed treatment for his tuberculosis. He was very ill when he came to the United States, and in fact, they almost excluded him from coming to the United States because he had a communicable disease. But the person who was doing his paperwork at the American embassy in India saw how disappointed he was to be excluded from coming to the United States because of his tuberculosis. And he said, the immigration worker said, I see how disappointed you are. Come back next week. I may have an update for you. So he came back the next week, and the man handed him a visa and said, this is called a compassion visa. We are letting you into the United States because you have tuberculosis and because you have not been able to get proper treatment where you are living. And so his visit and his time in the United States stemmed from this compassion extended to him in the American embassy in 1976. And it continued, where he just gave and gave and gave so generously of his time. The last time he was in Columbus, he I believe it was 2011. I may be confused about that. But he insisted, he said, anybody who wants to see me, make sure they see me. I want to see everyone who wants to see me. And so he would do interviews into the afternoon, into the evening, just so he could see everyone who wanted to see him. So he was incredibly special. Some of his teachings used words, some of them he lived, you know? And there is no one thing that I can tell you that he said to me that, you know, but, oh, so many things. You know, so many. When I was getting ready to go into retreat, he looked into my room and said, what are you doing with all these books? This is his English, which I am translating for you. And I said, well, I thought I would have time to read. And he looked at me and he said, you're not going on vacation. You're not going on vacation. He said, there's only one reason you're here, and that is because out there, he pointed outside the building, he said, out there are beings who are suffering and they need you. That's the only reason that you are here. I sent the books home the next day. But it was those are the kinds of things that stick with you, you know? But really it was how he lived his life in this incredible wisdom and generosity. When I first met him, I said to myself, I don't know what he has, but I'd like to have that. I'll have what he's having. You know, people say, well, how did you become Tibetan Buddhist? You were raised Catholic. And I said, yeah, I know, it's weird, isn't it? I said, if I had met a nice Jesuit priest, like, you know, the previous Pope, I'd probably still be Catholic. But instead, I met a really nice Tibetan monk who embodied the characteristics that I wanted to possess. Strength, but gentleness. Usually you don't see the same thing in one person. But anyway, so that's the best I can do at the moment. Yes?
Thank you very much, Lama Kathy.
Mm-hmm.
I continue to struggle with the ways of meeting the future, which, you know, I'm never right in my assumptions or predictions, but I see it as being a more difficult future, more suffering, mean people in charge.
Mm-hmm.
So you've taught that we can improve the world through our own practice, and then our compassion and living will ripple out into the society. But I don't know whether the society will allow those ripples. I see it as having a big dam that stops the ripples. So I think kind of to get the message out is to get the message out, not shake people by the shoulders and say you gotta calm your mind, but rather I guess educate and advertise the society. And I'd like you to help us do that more so that we can in some way improve the society more than just sitting.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. You've put it really well and very succinctly too. So thanks for really kind of crystallizing the situation we're finding ourselves in. So I appreciate you doing that. You know, I think about the Tibetans at times like this. I really do. I think about them. And you know, the government that's in charge of their country is taking the indigenous children and sending them to boarding schools in another country. really sad. And that makes me feel really sad, that they're not able to keep their homeland, they're not able to keep their language, they're not able to keep their religion, they're not able to keep their traditions, very much like what happened to indigenous people in the United States, very much like that. And yet, here they are, resilient, continuing. It's amazing. And I'm hoping that we can have some of those characteristics inside us that just allow us to be present with whatever is happening. They lost everything. The Cultural Revolution, many of them were forced to actually throw grenades into shrines that had been built for Dharma. They were forced to destroy their own monasteries and things like that. And so I think about how did they survive? And I think those are incredible examples for us of just the incredible resiliency that people can exhibit and be committed to goodness no matter what. Shantideva, the Indian guru of Buddhism who lived in the 8th century, he said, just as when a flash of lightning rends the night and in its glare shows all that the darkness had hidden, just momentarily like that. He said, likewise, rarely through the Buddha's power, virtuous thoughts rise in this world. So that means that the world is full of darkness and the thoughts of goodness are few. But then in the very next stanza, he says, Shantideva writes, thus behold the utter frailty of goodness. And then he says, except for perfect bodhicitta, there is nothing able to withstand the great and overwhelming force of evil. Chapter 1, verse 5 and 6. And it's the only thing I know in the whole book. I don't know anything else in the whole book, but I know chapter 1, verse 5 and 6, because that's where Shantideva reassures us that no matter how much is bad in the world, that perfect bodhicitta can stand up to it and survive and thrive. So I'm going to bank on that. So we're very fortunate to have a podcast, and people find us through the podcast, and there are hundreds of people who listen, and so we're doing the best we can from here. Thank you. Yeah. There's time for one more if there's one more out there. Yeah? Well, then I think we've done well. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about these things. And I'm so excited for this future. I don't know what's going to happen, but, we're going to be here for it. We're going to be, I love it. We're going to be here for it. And it's, there you go. Yay! We need this. It's so wonderful. It's like, see, there's everything right there. That's everything. There's a beautiful image in the Mahamudra tradition. There's a beautiful image that says that those who train their minds in meditation, when the moment of enlightenment comes, it's like a child jumping into its mother's arms. That's going to choke me up. But that's because, we train in what is called the child clear light, so to speak. And when the ground clear light appears for us, either in meditation or at the time of death or wherever it appears to us, it is like the reunion of a mother and a child. And that they just jump into mom's arms. So I feel like that's an amazing sign. So thank you for bringing that to us today. Let's dedicate all the goodness. Let's dedicate the goodness through the dedication of merit, which we will recite in English just the one time, through gathering all the goodness that we brought here and dedicating it to all beings. It starts with the words, by this merit. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to the desk in the back. You got it to work. Yay! And we will look forward to seeing you next Sunday. So thanks very much. Be safe out there. Om Mani Padme Hum.